G'day, mate. What's
Hello.
your name?
Hey, I'm Alex White. How you doing, buddy?
Good, mate. What do you do, Alex?
Oh, geez, a podcasting guest, host, comedy, and then other stuff that pays the bills, I guess.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Crowd Workcast. My name's Andrew Barnett. Thanks so much for joining me. Now, before we talk about today's episode, I do need to do the shameless plugging of these three big shows I've got coming up. My show, How Good, my solo hour, is coming back to Brisbane, a bit of an encore after the Brisbane Comedy Festival. That'll be on October 7 at the Sit Down Comedy Club. I would love to get as many people along to that as we can. Newcastle, it'll be your turn on October 22. This is my first time doing a solo hour in Newcastle, so that'll be a lot of fun. And Sydney, November 3 at the Sydney Comedy Store. I really want to make sure we get lots of people along to all three of these shows. I'm very excited about them. So if you'd like to come along, I'd love to see you. Hit alist.com.au for tickets or follow one of the links in the show description. Now, today's guest, Alex White. I've known Alex for probably 10 years now, and he's a very funny comedian. He's one of these guys who's sort of almost a bit low self-esteem about how funny he is. He's always working on it, and because of that low self-esteem, it's taken him 10 years to finally get around to doing his first hour-long show, which... Good news if you're in Sydney is at the Sydney Fringe Festival. He'll be on September 14 to 17 at the Factory Theatre. His show's called Don't We Look Stupid. I can't recommend getting along to that enough. I probably will myself. So tickets at sydneyfringe.com for those. Follow Alex on Instagram. He is at whitebaitonline. And of course, you can listen to his podcast. It's called the Community Notice Board Podcast. Really funny, really interesting podcast, which once again, I regularly listen to that, and I believe I will be a guest on it again reasonably soon. So yeah, get around that. Now, if you're enjoying this podcast, please do like, subscribe, do all that sort of stuff. A review would help if you are so inclined, and just spread the word. We'd love to sort of build the following of this little show. It's a lot of fun to do, so hopefully you're enjoying it as much as I am. Other than that, let's rip into it. This is my chat with Alex White.
Podcast guest doesn't often pay very well. You drive a hard bargain here, mate.
That's the revealing part of it is, yeah, I do all this stuff. And then stuff that pays the bills
and then
as
stuff
well.
that pays the bills at the end. But it's probably, I mean, it's true because what do you do? It's not like how do you pay the bills? It's a different question, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
That's the thing. Like, yeah, what you do sometimes is... Yeah, it's the thing that you think about most or want to do most.
Yeah.
So you're obviously comedian and podcaster. You're one of the hosts of the Community Notice Board.
Yeah, so the pod on everyone's lips, three of us at least. Yeah, we've been doing that for a couple of years now. So it is like, honestly, when I started doing the pod with the guys, we just were like, oh, it's just literally an excuse. We started during COVID, and it was like an excuse to hang out with two of my mates, really. And obviously doing a pod's fun. But it was never really... the amount of time and effort we put into it is as much as I put into stand-up now, because there's a lot of... It's hours.
Yeah.
And then also on the flip side, then like... we actually have fans now of the pod. I've never had fans as a comic, People love your spot. They don't even remember you from anything. But pod fans will be like, I did a gig in Melbourne recently. I was just down there and did great. And then this guy came up to me afterwards, like, oh, I love the pod, just some random guy. And he chatted and he bought me a beer and it's like, that never happens from comedy.
That's because it's weird because comedy's like, in some ways, it's more immediate, more like it's supposed to be you're creating a personal experience in the room.
Of course.
But it's also very fleeting, whereas podcasting is like you're way more removed from the audience, but they feel like they're...
Yeah.
I mean, I've listened to podcasts since they first... Like, I remember, I remember maybe 2008 was the first time I came across podcasts like that. Kevin Smith had that podcast early on.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like, I started getting it, and I was like, these are like, because you feel like because you just feel like you're part of a conversation.
Yeah, it's a different thing, right? But they've also got so much more time with you, whereas they see you do a 10-minute spot. That's a 10-minute spot. Whereas like you listen to 3 episodes, what, that's 3 hours,
Yeah.
right? And so there's so much more time to hear from this person and get into the dynamics of, you know, their voice and so yeah, you get a lot more time with them. I'm sure if someone saw you on stage for like 5 hours of spots, they would be like, "All right, I know what this guy's about
Yeah.
now, right?" Like
God, I'm
I'm a
sick
fit.
of this
I'm
guy.
sick of this. Yeah, the same 10 every time,
Yeah.
the same bits.
Yeah.
That would be tough. So it is a whole different thing. So it's like I used to just be like, I would think podcasting is this thing to do on the side, but now it's like, oh, this is like, I mean, I would. It's not a lucrative thing for us, but it's certainly like, okay, this is like there is people who like what we're doing, so that's a good thing. And
Yeah.
stand up has always been a lot more for me. I feel like, you know, I'm not out there like hating it, waiting for someone to, waiting to make money from it. It's always been like something I really like doing. And then if that happened, awesome. But yeah, podding is different. It just seems like it's clearer way to get a fan base and build something from it, you know?
I think your podcast too is because you three, so it's you, Drew Bensley, and
Jamie
Jamie
Kirk,
Kirk.
yeah.
So you three are obviously mates,
Mm,
and so it feels like you're part of a conversation. Even especially
yeah.
the episodes where it's the three of you,
Yeah.
it feels like I'm just part of this conversation with my mates. I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not getting a word
I'm
in, to
just
be honest.
laughing along.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
I think
Oh, no,
Siri's trying to get a word
Sarah's
in.
gonna get it. Can I get in on this? Yeah, no, that's it. And I feel like they're the best eps for us is when we have that energy, you know. And I was just saying to you before we started this, but it's like there's a total different energy when you sort of know your friends. You've got a chemistry with our guest. Often we'll have most of the time we'll have a fourth mic as a guest. And then sometimes when you don't know them and they don't know you, it's a little bit like, oh, and it's all of a sudden like 4 people who don't know each other instead of
Yeah.
like 3 who do. And because us 3 can't be all buddy and then leave this other guy out or this other
Like,
girl out, right? Like, so we all just get a bit still and they're always a bit like, oh, you know, it's never as fun, but you know, you got to do that a little bit when there's like a sort of a name touring comic or someone who you know, and they're always tough for 10 minutes and then you relax and you
yeah.
get into it, right?
Well, I think too, it depends on like if the person's listened to an episode or whatever, the guest. Because
Mm,
I get the same thing. Like sometimes I'm chatting to people I know really well and I've known for years, and other times it's like someone I don't know as well, and it's
mm.
that thing, like that thing of like they don't necessarily know what the podcast is or what
They
it's
don't
about,
know
so
where
they're
it's
sort of
going.
yeah, they're sitting back waiting for you. And then other times it's just like I literally say, "G'day, mate. What do you do?"
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's just I look at the
Straight
clock
in.
and I'm like, "Oh, that's been an hour. We
Yeah,
got to stop now."
100%, 100%. We'll find like if anyone, I think you did it before you came on our pod, and it's always a great sign when they listen to an app on the way over, even like they don't
Yeah.
have to. And it's just, and I mean, I don't know how you couldn't do that as someone going on a pod, just to be like, what is this thing, you know, not to be, you just to understand what it is. And that is always like, oh, okay, this is sort of the vibe and I get it. And then they're always great. So even if we've had people from Melbourne that we've never met before ever, and they're comics that like you go, oh, I know that guy's a comic in Melbourne,
Mm.
and then never met him, and they just walk in and they've just been in enough pods to know, listen a little bit, come on, and then it's just like, great, this is just unreal. Like
Yeah.
it's a great chat.
Just know what it's about, so
know
you
what it's
can
about.
what you're supposed to bring to it.
Totally, totally, yeah. But it's fun, and it's been really good for us, and it's the rigor of it. Like, you know, with stand up, it's like, I mean, I'm sure you do it where, I mean, when you got a tour and stuff, but when you don't have a schedule, and it's like, oh, I could go to this gig or I could stay home and watch a bit of telly tonight, right? Like,
Man, the lack of structure, like, as everyone goes, I just want to do it full time. I want to do it full time. But the lack of structure that brings
Yeah.
is so dangerous.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, I don't know. I feel, and I'm doing a show this year for the first time, and I did that because I never really had the drive to do it, but I realized I need something to work towards because I came out of COVID doing stand up for fun, But like when you don't have anything, you don't need to come up with new bits. You don't need to work on it when you're just doing it for fun. It's like you just don't do it as much. And then you sort of, when you do it, you're rusty and you never really get into the rhythm. And I'm like, I need to have an hour I need to push for this thing, you know?
So first off, because I've got a bunch of questions about this,
Oh, okay, cool.
just plug the show. We'll plug it
Yeah.
again at the end, but plug the
Yeah.
show now.
Okay, so yeah, I am doing a show Fringe September 14th, 16th, 17th. It's called Don't We Look Stupid. It's my first ever hour show that I'm doing in Sydney, and it's yeah, it's I'm really excited about it because I just did it as a placeholder, book it in, and then I've just gone, well, now and I've got to do it. Do I do the bits? What do I do with it? And I've come up with, I think it's a pretty good structure. But I'm just, it's not a show. It's stand up, but there's a bit of framework.
Okay, it's a show because
Yeah.
stand-up's a show.
Yeah,
But
sorry, I didn't mean it's not a
no,
it's not
you're
a
not going to.
conceit. There's
There's no journey.
there's no massive thing, but I also understand that like it is good to have a little bit of a framework for it. So I was like, okay, I've got a bit of a way to sort of put all these bits together in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm similar in the way I construct my shows in that it's good to have something the
Yeah.
audience can hang on to in
100%.
terms of, okay, so where's this thread
Where's this going?
Like, so if there's a bit that's not, they're not buying into, they're still on board following the thread, which is which I like to have that without the same thing. I don't try and have too much of a message.
I don't want the takeaway to be the message. I want the takeaway to be the funny jokes and the stand up, but just to keep everyone's attention, almost like the maestro, there's a bit of a flow. And yeah, so the premise was I basically my grandma died last year and she left us all these photos of, and I just went through them all, and there's just so many stupid photos where like I just feel like there's all these like ridiculous photos of me growing up that I can sort of like show and leap off onto all these bits. So there's a lot of bits that I just had that I just realized all connected with like parts of your life where you sort of feel awkward and stupid and weird and out of place. And it's just reflected in some of these photos. So it's almost like a bit of a PowerPoint slide sort of thing. And then there's some bits that dive off it. And so it helped a way because I had all these other bits that I liked that didn't fit in. And I'm like, well, I don't need to do them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've got other gaps where I'm getting married this year. I didn't have any material about that.
Oh, you will.
Yeah. Well, once I get married, you're right. Yeah. But I was like, well, I'm getting that. Something here about this? And then I started and it sort of drove me to write all these bits about it, which has been really good as well. So, whereas you're just scratching around going, what else is funny? You know what I mean? Netflix, what's that? Cabs.
That's
like, I feel like that's not, for me, it doesn't bring out as much as any good bits.
There's two, like, I find there's two different ways I approach things. There's some stuff I've noticed which are where it's more just about, okay, it might be about taxis or whatever. Because you've just noticed it
totally.
naturally.
Yes.
But then there's other times where, like you said, you're getting married. There's I might write about this because this is what's going on in my life.
Yeah.
And I think if you have a mix of both, because if you're just sitting waiting to notice stuff, that's when you really clutch at straws.
That's exactly my point.
Have you ever noticed that fridges
that's right.
always lean back slightly?
Yeah.
Like, what?
And the reversible doors, left, right. Like you just end up doing like a Seinfeld like parody. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just like, what's the deal with stuff? Whereas sometimes those things will pop. You can't force them, right? Like sometimes I'll pop into your head, and I'll do it all the time, and I'm like just about to fall asleep or something. Not all the time, but sometimes. And then you go, oh, that's really funny, and you write it down. And sometimes those bits can be great, but I can't go for a walk and go, okay, what's funny? Like that, you just
nothing worse than a blank page. You need something. If someone says to you, this is what there's nothing scarier than that. Oh, you can write about absolutely anything, whatever you want. It's like, too many choices.
So many.
Where if someone says, hey, or you give yourself the task, you know what, write about this.
Yeah.
Or do some sort of structure around, like, here's a topic.
Here's a
You're
topic.
gonna take it apart.
Or I've got a really good bit about something, and you can pivot off that because this tag ends in this, and then you can go from there to there. Like, I find, and I've worked, my actual job that pays the bills has just been in offices for ages. and just bullshit office work. And I could write like if I had to write an hour about office stuff and then perform it to like a office crowd, like so it because there's so much of your life you're in there, it's like sinking in the back of your head and you don't notice it. And so then when I started writing this bit I had about working in an office, there was so many tangents that come up because I'm like this bit. Obviously, I don't want to spend an hour doing a show about working in an office, so
But
you get a bit
there's
sick of it. So, but it's
no,
so
I'd say
much.
I don't think that like if knowing how you write, I could see you doing an hour on whatever, like
Yeah,
because you're very good at just pulling the thread, pulling the thread, pulling the thread. And
yeah,
that's where, and you know what? Like you said, everyone has worked in an office at some stage. Like workplaces are different, but they're not, they
yeah.
don't, like, as soon as you get a group of people together who are there for employment,
Mm,
certain dynamics just come out. So it's
of
not like,
course.
it's not necessarily unrelatable.
That's
Like,
that's right. Yeah. I mean it is and it does always work. Like except I did a gig the other day in front of and the whole crowd were 20-year-old like English and American backpackers who are here for study leave. And I'm like, you guys don't really know
this
much
is
about
some gap year stuff.
superannuation, you know, like,
Yeah.
and so that was a bit like, all right, this is the one crowd and not into this. They'll, but yeah, I feel like I write, like I come up with like volume of stuff way better when it's like you're like, there's some way, there's some prompt or there's something. It's either this is something I'm going through in my life that I got to write about, or even better, it's when it's like, here's a good bit that's working, and now I can just like expand it by adding
Mm.
stuff to it, and maybe, and then the stuff you add might like sort of just form and mature into its own chunk of stuff, and you don't need that stuff
That
beforehand.
man, the amount of times I've had bits where I thought they needed to go after the bit because
Yeah.
that's where like I'm like, okay, so I've done that thing where this tag, oh, maybe I'll just keep writing on that,
Mm-mm.
and then you write on, and that bit became bigger,
Yeah.
and so this little bit was always the introduction
Mm.
to the bigger bit, and then all of a sudden you just realize, oh, that's unnecessary, and it's
Yeah.
not as strong as this, so just
Yeah.
start with this
Just
bit.
start with that stuff, it's matured. It's sort of like, it's the new generation of the bit. It's so much, and that's so fulfilling. That's what's the best. Like, there's nothing for me. I don't know if you like what you get out at stand up because I think we all do it. Um, I feel like you're a psycho if you do comedy and you don't enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
if you're doing it because of some dream, but you don't actually enjoy. Like if you wouldn't do it for free if you could, that to me, and you're still doing it, I'm like, why are you here? Because it's so, to me, it's got to be fulfilling in some way. But the best part is when you've got a new bit and it starts working. Like it's the best feeling,
yeah.
right? Like like crushing with a bit that has always worked is great, but like a new bit when you go, oh, that's funny, and then you try it and it works, and you go, geez, that's great.
Do you get the thing where I get a bit? I'll often get a thing where it's a new bit, it's working, it's killing, and then it just has a dip for some
Oh,
reason,
totally.
and it's like, oh, and then you listen back and you go, oh, the blood stopped going. I started
Yeah.
thinking, oh, this bit works,
Mm-hmm.
and there's not
There's
that.
every couple of, oh, what, I don't know how time frame, but I have this like fatal flaw where I think as soon as you get a 5 or a 7 that's all working really well, but it's still new enough that you're
Excited about it.
excited about it, but you get to a point where you're like, this is bulletproof, and then you're on a bad night, like it's not a great show, and in your head you go, wait till they see these new bits.
Yeah,
Like I know this crowd's tough, but no, 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 I'm up next, and these bits will save the show because you just haven't seen them fail yet,
yeah.
and then they always fail, and there's never been a case where it's been bomb, bomb, bomb. Me with my new 7 crushing, like it's so then you just go ugh, and you just feel, gee, you just like you're so vulnerable because you're like, these bits, I thought you were invincible, and it's probably that. It's probably like I'm just going up and press play on these hot bits.
Yeah.
It's all and then they just like looking at you like, why are you so confident with this weird like rote stuff? It's the worst. It's just it's a cycle, and then the dip, and then the redemption when you figure out like
Yeah.
how to properly do it or whatever you need to fix
And
about it, right?
you've got it working
You've
again.
got it
And
working
yeah.
again, and it stays, and then it's pretty solid for a while, right?
So how long have you been doing comedy now?
Wow, it's nearly 10 years now.
It's a
2014, I
long
think.
time before you do your first hour. What was
Yeah.
Why'd you wait?
Oh man,
And I'm
I
not saying that's a bad thing because there's lots of people that should wait.
there's probably two reasons. One is that, which is when I started, first couple of years in, then it was like, oh, can you believe old mate's doing a solo show in his first year?
Jamie Kirk, yep.
Yeah, both could, yeah. Like people would be like, can you believe it? And then you just go like, oh, okay, that's a bad thing, right? So you
Yeah.
start to feel that. But the second thing is, I like, comedy is so much fun, but I'm so still cringe. I'm so embarrassed about it as a like. I'll never like, people say I'm a comic. And I
Yeah.
was at. I'll tell a story. I'll be on Twitter. Like, I was in a cafe and someone's like, "What do I do?" And I said, "I'm a comedian." Like, you started the conversation, like, but I know you, right?
Yeah.
If I was at the line at the butcher's, I'm never going to tell anyone I'm a
Man,
comic.
the amount of times doing it's one of the reasons I've never given up this, because the whole idea of this podcast started with I'll do some crowd work questions, and
Yeah.
realistically now it's just that first two
Yeah, yeah.
questions, and it just turns into a conversation. But it is the only reason I haven't dropped that pretense and just gone, oh, it's just Andrew Barnett chatting to someone, is it's so fun watching comedians try and say they're
Wriggle
a
out of it.
comedian.
Yeah.
They're just, it's
No
the
one
one where so many people are like, oh well,
Yeah.
like Peter Berner didn't say
What did he
comedian.
say?
He said, what does he say? A creator of, I forget. I'd have to. He phrased it beautifully.
Yeah, right.
But like, it was just, it's that.
It's so vulnerable, and it's such a lame thing to say for some reason, which I don't understand why, but it's so true. And like, I'll still meet like friends of like my girlfriends and shit, and they'll be like, "Oh my god, so you do stand up?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sort of, it's on the side." And you just like, can we change the conversation, because it's so cringy to say, and I don't really know why. I think it's something about like how you need to then be funny, and it's like you haven't been funny. Like at work, my job, like no one knows I do stand up, because it's like, how embarrassing then. You're the comic in every meeting. Everyone's like, "What have you got?" Here. So that just the general cringe of that has always been. I've never wanted to do a show that's me. I've always wanted just to be part of a show, and then I just was like, I just got to do it and just book it in, and like put it in. It's almost like what people would do on their bucket list first spot. Like,
Yeah.
I feel it's the same, like, I'll just sign up for Raw, and then I'm sure by then I'll have the confidence to do it, and then just the date clicking, I've got this thing that counts down the days until my show. I'm like, oh my God. But I really am looking forward to doing the show, but it's like, and I'm really glad I've done it. But yeah, there's just something really in me that just doesn't want to present it as like, this is what I'm doing, this is what it's so cringy for me for some
Man,
reason.
I talk about, and this is one of my theories, is the Venn diagram of good at marketing, good at stand up, and then you want to be in the middle.
Yeah,
because
you want to have a little bit of
those people are the ones that are the guaranteed success.
100%.
But there's plenty of people that are good at the marketing side that aren't as good at the stand-up side.
Yeah.
Where you fall for mine on the stand-up side, not on the marketing
I
side.
know.
Because you're not like, you've been doing it, 10 years. It surprises me, but also doesn't surprise me. This is your first hour.
Yeah.
Because you are not that, like, you're not the self-promoting sort of guy.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I don't, like, even and I'm changing that now. I'm starting to go, because I'm like, I never wanted to sort of, I just wanted to do stand up. I'm like, you gotta, like, the pod and getting fans from that was like, oh, this is actually, even though it's like not, throngs of people like amassing us like the Beatles or anything, but it's like, even we're at the pub and some random guy will be like, "Hey, I love the pod," and it's like, wow, that's something that it takes a long time, but you can build towards that. And so,
but
that's
it. You're building, and the beauty of that pod is you guys are very much yourselves on that pod.
Mm-hmm.
So you're building an audience that will come to your stand up that are buying into your sensibility.
Yeah.
So they're not going to come along and go, "This isn't the guy I hear on the pod." It's
totally.
the same. It's the same sense of humor.
Yeah,
So,
hopefully, yeah. And that, but I'm like, yeah, it's a crossover thing, and then it's like, so I've started being like, oh, I've got to like,
I've got an idea for you.
oh, here we go.
I'm thinking, right? So you know how like now the big comics, they all do the Q&A at the end, the crowd work for clips.
Yeah.
Just you lights up at the end of the show, 15 minutes. Oh, I'm from Campbelltown.
Yeah,
And you
yeah, yeah.
just roast everyone's suburb.
Yeah, all right, I got it. I know we can go through all the history of it,
Yeah, yeah.
all the shitty Facebook
I'm
groups
from
and stuff.
Adelaide. A lot of serial killers.
Yeah, all right. Barrel at home is that uncle is. Like we've thought about doing. We want to do a live show as well, which like for the pod, which we think will be great as well. And that's sort of that'll be the
Definitely.
dream. I mean, we're working towards that, but it's like, yeah, it's gonna be great to have. It'd be great to just like build a little bit of both, like a little bit of like, yeah, just to be able to do a show and just be like, without even trying too hard, 20 people are coming. Like
Mm.
that to me is just like bliss, you know? It's unreal. Like I don't care about the friggin' selling out the Metro Theatre or anything like that. It's like just get 20 people down to come down to a friggin' trial show without me having to like beg, borrow, and steal people. That to me is a dream. So I'm like, I got to start like actually, yeah, just trying to promote, build a friggin', like put clips on and all that stuff. I got to do
Mm.
that, and it's so again. I'll do the bit like I got to do a clip, and I'm like, no, I better do the dishwasher first.
Mate.
Just chores around
Oh,
the house are like so much more fun to me.
you're you're talking to a guy who this is literally now, like I do a little bit of radio, but this is literally now what I've got to do to
Y-
pay the bills.
Yeah,
And it is like I struggle to like put clips up and that sort of stuff. And I'm getting better at it. And I'm starting to notice it's actually once you do it regularly enough, like, and I've literally, this is from a week and a half's experience,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's like I've even noticed just in getting more regular with putting clips up and little different things up
Mm,
that like you notice that it starts to build. Everyone says it's
lots easier.
consistency,
Yeah, it's 100% consistency, and
but
that's it. Yeah.
I'm a bit like you where I'm like I have a feeling you'd be like this where you look at the clip and it's not quite perfect. It's not quite.
Mm,
But I remember an internet comedian said to me years ago, just in a moment of honesty, and like a guy does stand up, a good stand up, and then got big through some internet stuff. And he just said, "Hi, Andrew." He goes, to be honest, a lot of the time it's quantity over quality. A lot of
yeah.
the time, he said you put quality stuff up there,
Mm.
but you don't, like, not everything you're going to do is going to be
100%.
gold.
You don't know what's going to hit. I mean, you talk to like someone like Goxie, right?
Yeah.
Like Goxie, if you look back at he was putting up just clips of just the silliest stuff. Some was really funny, but it got nothing. And then he literally did classic Stitch Up, which
Oh my God.
and he did it. He literally went to what he did it. If something happened at work, he went home, he did that clip, he went to work the next morning, and then at the same workplace, someone was like, "Is this you?" And it just went to a million list. Like he just been putting silly videos that got 100 views up, and then
Mm.
that's like him. That's Goxie,
Yeah.
right? And if he just went, no, that's not funny. I'll post that tomorrow, and then never got around to it. Like you just don't know. Like you got to throw enough shit at the wall sometimes. Like, but so I know all these lessons. It's not
Yeah.
to apply them at all. I'll sit here and tell you all day about it's very important. I agree,
Yeah,
Andrew,
no,
that you
no.
got to be consistent, and then I'll post something every
Mate,
9 months.
it's two blokes talking themselves
Yeah,
into it right
I
here.
know, I know. I'm gonna go make clips. I've done it so many times. I've made like a clip at some dumb, stupid idea, some thing, and got like 80% through it. And I'm like, I can't get over the line to make this because I'm such a critic, and I just view it as through a prism of me being a cynic of someone else's thing. So I'm like, what would someone else think of this? Oh, that's corny. That's hack. That's
That's
dumb.
that's funny because like I do the same, but then I watch people like that do put clips up that we know, and that's never my reaction realistically.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, good for them, they're doing it. Hopefully, that's
yeah,
doing well. Like I'll give it a like.
sure.
It's
I
it's
always back someone who's trying it. Sometimes I was a bit of a corny clip, but I'll be like, it's good that they're giving it. Like I'm never like, how dare they try?
yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's such a weird thing, but it's just inevitable. Like you can't just you have to bring an audience now. Like you can't
I
like ever just be good enough without anything else attached to it. I think
That's I think, yeah, what if you get to a certain point where you realize, okay, it's not just a case where you'll get plucked by someone going, listen, kid, I'm giving you the keys to show business.
Yeah, you've
And
got it all. I'm gonna do all your clips for you, and I'm gonna bring
yeah,
an audience. Like it's. It's just, and that's totally fine. And actually, the other thing is I've started to be like starting to feel like I'm getting good enough at stand up that I'm not too embarrassed by it anymore. Whereas
Yeah,
I used to just be like, oh God, what if I bomb? And now I'm like as in a friend or school people or someone coming along, even close mates of mine. I've known them since I was 10. I was like, oh God, they're coming. What if I bomb? And now I'm like, well, obviously I can bomb, but I don't think it's going to be embarrassing anymore. And
yeah,
and most likely I'll do well, and or it'll be good. And and they're always like, you were great, So I've got more comfortable that like put in a room full of people and it's just me, and I'm the whole show. That I'm like, I know it's going to be fine.
Oh, man,
Took a
and
long time for me to
10
come to that.
10 years of experience you would have because you churn material pretty well anyway. Like,
Yeah, that was a big flaw. When I started, I would like, because I don't know why I thought this, but I was like, you got to sort of, I would be so self-conscious about doing the same material at like an
oh,
open mic
man,
again.
I remember, so one of my earliest memories of you starting was when we'd go down to the Chippo.
Yeah, that was my first ever gig, was the workshop.
Yeah, so you come to the workshop, and you'd come to the workshop every week with different stuff, and you'd have all these amazing premises, and then you just give it one punchline, maybe a tag, and then you're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing think consistently, the thing I used to say to you most was, Just keep it. That's great. Just there's heaps in it. Just
Heaps,
keep writing that."
yeah, I remember
And then
that.
the next week you'd be back with like 8 new premises, and I'm like, "Where is this guy
Where is
getting
it?
these premises? They're amazing."
I mean, yeah, like I never figured out that like, yeah, you need to like, yeah, you could just drill down. I remember actually one of my first memory of you was there giving good feedback, and it was a bit I did. It was a long bit about teeth and dentists and stuff, and it was some stupid bit. But it was like it worked, but it was like you were like, just keep going. Like there's more there, just dig. And I remember that because and I mean I did, but I don't know. I either got sick of doing the same bit, or I was always like, oh, I did this gig a month ago, and now I need to come up with a whole new. And it's like no one cares.
No, it's not the
No
same
one.
people.
It's not the same people. And if one comic's there, they're not gonna be like, oh, he's doing the old
Oh,
dentist bit
it
again.
took me so long to realize, like, even when I was doing the first hosting the store regularly, and I'd be trying to churn material over and get, and then realize the guys I was working with were doing the same,
Yeah,
like they did have the same ish set for 12 months,
yeah, of
and
course.
I'm like, oh, they're not, because I'm like, oh, I know it's a different audience, but the comics, they'll get bored of me,
Sure.
and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, you don't have to,
Mm.
like, they're not noticing either. You just
Yeah. It doesn't, and no one even if they did notice, it's not a like. I mean, you're doing the same set for 5 years. It's like, come on, what's going
mm,
on here? But yeah, I just no one notices you as much as you think anyone does, and I mean that workshop was maybe a little bit different because it's like as a workshop, like it's
mm.
supposed to be for that. But yeah, there's so many, and then I
So
go
just
back.
for context, that
Mm,
workshop, for anyone listening, you'd
mm,
basically come along, you get 3 minutes of new material
mm,
each week to work on,
yeah,
and then it was just in front of other
it was
comics, and
just in
then
front of other
yeah,
comics.
and
Yeah.
you give each other feedback on what you
So
thought.
there was a little bit of a lens of that, but I would just throw material away, and I would just not throw it away, but I would just be always on to the next thing. And I don't know. I started pretty late too. Like I started when I was 27.
Yeah,
So
I,
that's like not that late, but it's late for a lot of people.
it feels late when you're hanging around 19-year-olds
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
first
yeah,
start, because
yeah.
I started at 28, man,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like, yeah, I felt so old
Mm,
because I was married, I had a kid at
yeah,
that
right.
stage too, like, so everyone, like, I just was living a different life to most of the
Totally.
other people that were
Totally.
starting.
I
But
had a few mates who, when I started, like Jamie's my age and he started roughly the same time. So I had a few touch points like that. But then it was also, I feel like when you start that late, you have so much of life experience that there's so many things to draw on. Whereas 19-year-olds are, what are they talking about?
that
Like
that
not
was
to sound like an old wise sage at 28, but so you got all these things because you're like, oh, there's all this flurry of stupid things you can talk about because you've experienced a lot more.
well, that's the thing, and that's not like hard and fast rule for everyone. Like, I
Mm.
found, like, I would have been, if I'd started at 19, I would have been horrendous.
Oh,
Like,
totally.
And that's
I
why I
mean
would.
you, not me.
Yeah, yeah.
I would have been
No,
fine. No,
I
no, of
because
course.
I always say I'm glad I was married when I started. Like, because if
Yeah,
I was
yeah, yeah,
single when
yeah.
I started, I would have been the worst. I would have just looked at, oh, there's a pretty girl in the audience.
Yeah,
Is
yeah, yeah.
she laughing? What does she think's funny? And it
Sure.
just would have been pandering bullshit.
Yeah, totally. And I cringe about bits I was doing at 27, 28, and not just because they're just corny or dumb or like, why did I think that was funny? But like, who knows what would have said at 19, you know?
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ. So I agree. It's like it's both sides. I can see it being an advantage to not an advantage, but certainly there's a pros and cons to it. But starting a bit late and having a bit of a life and not, I just worked really hard until I was 27 and then did comedy and then I've just like skated through my
So
work
what
life,
was that previous career? Not
Oh,
really had.
just working my way up in like IT world. And so I just worked a lot. I just worked like 50, 60 hours a week and just that was my job and that's what I did, And I always wanted to do stand up, but I just never knew how to start. And then I moved to Sydney and then it became a lot easier. And I'm like, I just got to do this one day. I just
So
gotta try it.
moved to Sydney from
From
Newcastle.
Newcastle,
Yeah.
yeah. So born, bred Newy, which I didn't know you were as well, which is crazy.
Yeah, we realised the other day that we went to the same high school.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is crazy because I've known you for ages. I mean, you've been on our pod from Cowra, right?
Corowa.
Corowa.
Yeah. So we lived there until I was 16. I finished year 10 down there, and then we moved to. So my old man's a school teacher, so he got the deputy principal's job at Swansea High, and we
right.
moved up. And so my folks are still at Eleebana. And we
Yeah.
went to Warners Bay. I went to Warners Bay High for year 11 and 12.
Yeah, that's insane. And I lived in Valentine and it was next to Eleebana, played Valentine Eleebana Devils rugby leagues team for years.
Now
So-
that's a team that had some quality.
Oh,
The Devils had, I think, Brett Finch played for them.
Yeah.
Mick Ennis played for them.
Mick Ennis was a year above me. He was like Mick Ennis and Luke Burt played, and they were a year or 2 years above me, and they were like, "This Luke Burt guy's great." And then 2 years later, he's playing for the Eels or something.
Yeah.
Paul Harrigan, Brett Camorley, Adam Muir, absolutely from this little suburban club. And great area. Love that area. And you Warners Bay High, mate. And what about you swanning in at year 11 and then you school captain or something?
Vice captain. Mate.
How did
I
you
didn't
get
go
this?
too crazy.
Mate, worst year in, I reckon I was still introducing myself and I started at year 7.
That was weird because there was a few of us that were like, they said, "Oh, you got to do the speech to nominate." And there was a few of us, and I sort of just got roped into like, do a speech. And then one of the blokes who said, well, none of us are going to prepare. None of us just go up and riff. So, and then
What do you do for a living, mate?
we all do that. And then he goes up and he's written jokes so he became the school captain.
Well, of course, mate.
Mate,
He played us.
He did hardcore.
Like a fiddle. That's fucking perfect.
But that was our big innovation was musical roll call. Remember you used to play the song in the morning to get you to roll call?
Yeah.
That was
you guys.
That was us, mate.
Oh, we hated that. No.
Yeah.
But that was such a what a small world, mate.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we would have been in the same school at the same time. I would have been in 7 and you're in year 11 or 12, right? Yeah. That's what we worked out.
So
There
so
we go.
you would have been a mate of mine. His sister would have been in your year from Valentine, the Keatings.
Yeah.
I rode a car off on the corner of Andrew Road and where you turn
Yeah.
to go down the hill. Yeah.
I lived right on Lindsay Avenue, which is right near there. Yeah.
Mate,
okay.
it's a slippery corner.
Jeez, it is. I tell you.
It must have been a 95 Ford Laser.
Right. Were you speeding?
No.
Just
been converted to gas. And so, mate, speeding in this car wasn't really a big option. You needed time.
Need a lot of gravity.
But I just literally went around that corner, just probably a bit too quick, but just hit the, there was like diesel and shit on the road and it had been raining and it just nice little slide and then just bang into a tree.
Yeah.
The guy come out and goes, "Man, this happens all the time."
There's a big pile of them stacked up.
It would have been weird because I got out of the car and I'm like, all right, because this is I didn't have a mobile phone. And so I've just like, I've just looked and I've just left my mate's place up the road. And I thought, oh, I've got to run, go up there to call home and just say, hey, I need help.
I knew, yeah.
And so I remember getting out, going, all right, I'm gonna. And then I just jogged up to my mate's place, which is only 100 meters up the road, but people come out of their houses must have thought it was the craziest thing. Here's this
Yeah.
kid just crashes his car and
then
gets
do
out,
a
just
runner.
runs.
Like you've stolen it or something.
Yeah,
Everyone probably
because I'd
thought.
smashed the window, like where the car had hit too. I'd smashed the window. Apparently, I'd got whiplash on my arms and had gone out the window.
Oh shit.
And so I got to my mate's place and I've rung home. And then my mate goes, dude, you're bleeding.
Yeah.
And I had glass in my arm. And so
Holy
I remember just
jeez.
picking bits of glass out of my arm and
Just
putting
casually on the
yeah,
phone to your mum
in
picking
his
glass up.
bathtub. And so then my old man rocked up. And that year, he'd so the cops arrive and the tow truck driver and everything's there. And Dad arrives through from Swansea High. And that year, my dad's a bit of a big unit. But that year they'd done the shave your head for like, greatest shave or whatever. And
sure.
they'd raised enough money. He said, I'll do it. I'll shave you because he always had a beard.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, I'll do it if you raise this amount of money. So that day, they'd literally shaved his head razor and then shaved his beard and he just had the Kentucky waterfall mustache. And he gets out of the car, he goes, Jesus, Andrew. And I remember the cop looking at me going, mate, are you going to be all right? I was like, yeah, he's not
His
as
dad's in
scary
the
as he
Gladiators or something like that.
Yeah,
Oh, real.
It was.
It's a great part of the country, though. I love Newey. I loved it, and I love growing up there, like little Valentine area. And so but I was just working, and I sort of always wanted to move to Sydney. I don't know why. I think in my head, maybe I wanted to do comedy, but I never had a plan. And I just remember being like, and then I eventually moved to Sydney, got a job in Sydney. And then I was like, came down to that Comedy on Edge show just to watch. You know, the guy who goes to 2 shows in a row and you go,
Yeah.
oh, he wants to do comedy.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
me. And I was sitting in the show like, oh, yeah, I'm back again from last week. And I would have seen you. I remember seeing you. I remember seeing like Ben Squires and like people I end up being
bloody
mates with.
Squires.
And just being like, this guy's funny. I saw Cambo too, I think one of them. And just being like, this is great. And there's some people who are real bad.
Yep.
And that was good because I'm like, they're funny. I'm like, oh, that guy sucks.
I could do that.
I'm better than that. Get me
Yeah.
up there. And then I emailed, can I get a spot? And then they said, oh, you can do the workshop. I'm like, what the hell's a workshop? So then I just did, and I just wrote a bunch of jokes. And first time was horrendous, but then second time I got some laughs, and it just rolled.
It's funny to think now, especially now that there's so many just sign up open mics, that you had to send an email to get on. That was essentially just an open mic, and it was it could be hit and miss.
Yeah, totally.
But that you weren't just allowed to just try it.
Yeah.
That's just a no, mate. There's a level.
There's a level to this. That's right. When you get up to this, and it's like once you realize, exactly, you do 3 months or something like that.
Man, that workshop, that was one of the things that so many people go, well, I can't believe you go to that workshop. Because there were so many people that would give you advice that was horrendous.
Totally. It's probably one of them at some point. Because everyone was giving advice, and I'm like, I'll give some advice. I remember this guy, I always never forget, this is crazy comic who I love as a character in the Sydney scene. But he didn't understand jokes. And so he was so crazy. And I just remember, I can't remember who did it or what, but the bit they were doing was about McDonald's.
Yep.
And it was, let's just say, something about the menu items of McDonald's. And people were giving him tags, and so this guy puts in, it's like, what do you think? What about KFC? Like he just was doing like word association.
Guys, there's other restaurants.
Yeah. Because someone was like, you could do it about the McChicken because it was about McDonald's. And he just was like, we're just naming things that are related, KFC. And I remember sitting there like, oh, people are crazy in comedy. There's crazy people. Yeah. Like that guy is not unfunny. He's crazy. That was a big eye opener for me. But I loved it. I was just like, this is 2 things going on. I love comedy and I love craziness, and it's like so much to absorb. You know?
Yeah, you're in the right place.
Totally. If you love that,
and craziness, open mic room. Open mic
room, man.
I remember seeing. I remember when I first started going to. Was the Roxbury going when you?
No, it might have been, but I never went. I didn't know what it was. Like I might have found out too late. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember going one night because I'd done a couple of spots and I was entered, and I knew like I was going to have to do the competition like in a month's time or whatever. So I thought, we'll go a couple of times. Yeah. And there was a guy on stage, and he was like genuinely unhinged, like talking about yeah, no, because I went to jail because I forget what he was saying, but he's holding the beer, and he looks at both hands, he's got the microphone in one hand, beer in the other hand. He goes, oh, and he leans over to me in the front row. He goes, hold that, I got to scratch my face. And scratched his face and then took his beer back and just got back in it. It was like, but the moment of confusion where he's looking at both his
I
hands,
got to give him one. I don't
going,
know which
oh,
one to give him.
well, what am I going to do?
Dedicate the beer.
It was,
That's
and
so
that
funny.
was one of those moments. And I'm like, oh, cool, yeah, no, there's crazy people.
Yeah, yeah. I've got you get so many. So I used to go to them and I loved it, and I would go. I just instantly loved it, and I didn't really understand why. I still don't really know why, but I just love going and doing it, and so I just spend hours there watching. Eventually, you get sick of watching, but
Yeah,
when you start making friends and you go hang out the back at like Mug and Kettle or whatever like that, but like yeah, you just see so much crazy, unfunny, boring, unfunny, really funny, and you just figure it out.
unfunny but crazy, which is
Unfunny.
kind of funny for the wrong
Yeah,
reason.
totally. Sometimes,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
what's it? What do you reckon the craziest set you've ever
Person?
seen? A
Oh
person.
my God. I don't like in a funny, crazed way. I don't know if you remember Jimbo. He wasn't. There's a somewhat famous comedian called Jimbo who's like a bit of a
Who had
touring.
Gary the Goat.
Sure, yeah. I don't know anything about that guy, but
He
it's
used to
not.
promote himself as he was banned from every comedy club in every capital city.
Well, this other Jimbo is like the open mic version of that, where he only did open mics, but he was crazy and he used to get on the stage. But it was like craziness. It was like a character he would do, and then he would just go. It was a bit like Wolfie, but like not structured. Like Wolfie's like a bit like blah blah blah, but it's like that, but just like not making any sense. Whereas Wolfie's like actually really funny on top of that.
Mm.
But this guy would go and talk about how the Queen is rooting Barack Obama. He would just talk about like this weird,
Yes.
like just some weird thing, like, and he would just go on and on about it. And it was like word association-y weird crap.
Just like a Reddit message board
Totally,
in
yeah.
a set.
In a set, chat GPT craziness, just like blah 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 blah. Blah. And then he would get off stage and be like, thanks, mate. Yeah. And he would be a sort of normal guy, but then he'd scurry away into the night. I'm like, I don't know what's the real you. Do you know what I mean? Are you that guy? Is that finally you being crazy, or is this an act? But he was great, Jimbo. And there was Punny Tourette's was this crazy guy too. I loved him.
Punny Tourette's.
Do you remember Punny Tourette?
No.
He was the KFC McDonald's guy I was talking about before.
That's so good.
He was the best. He would be crazy. They were lovely guys, but just well, not lovely guys, but they were pleasant to you and me. They did chat to you, but there was just something weird about them, and
Something going on.
something going on. And yeah, I don't know. Do you remember what's your craziest?
Man, I remember doing, and it's crazy even the setting, doing that. Did you ever do Comedy Court, the competition that Dante ran at Starbar?
Of course,
So-
so much.
I was in like a final of that.
Yeah, of
And
course.
this was my white whale. I'd been in like 4 finals and never won one because I couldn't wrangle enough mates to come and vote.
Always
so-
a bridesmaid,
Mate, always the bridesmaid. And then so I was like, you know what? I need to be king of the Comedy Court at some stage. But the guy that went on before me was a guy I hadn't seen, and he must have won a heat because he was in the
He
final.
was in there. Yeah.
But he got up, and it was. Remember that guy who was the cops had just arrested him. He was the guy that was hiding out in the bush for ages and had shot, like, the cops were looking for him because he'd murdered someone and done something like, and so he
Could
was
be
wanted for a
Ivan Milat, but it's a stand-up comic,
yeah,
right?
so this guy, they'd recently arrested this guy. I can't remember his name,
don't-
but like he'd shot the cops. Like he was a real survivalist guy, and they were looking
Yeah.
for him up in the bush in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And his whole rant was about how that guy's the victim. He just did this whole
What?
rant, like just getting angrier and angrier. And in the end, just dropped the mic on the floor and stormed. But he didn't like walk off stage. He stormed out, walked out the door, and left the venue. Like it was just.
That's unreal.
And then I forget, Dante must have been emceeing. He goes, okay.
Yeah.
Voting. Made them vote. And then he goes, all right, next act.
not addressing
Just
it at
brought
all.
Straight on. And
Totally
the
normal.
best laugh I got was like, oh, Andrew, I'm not an angry man.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
audience is like laughed and went, oh, thank God, we're back to normal, are we?
Yeah.
Because, Dante just
That's
glossed
the
over it.
best part of Dante. The word, like, just that's of course, he just acts like that's normal. That's so funny.
Yeah.
And some of the people who did that show, I did that show for years, and it was good. And and other people wouldn't do it. And I'm like, no, it's good. And then eventually you go, I can't do this anymore.
It's good for a certain period
Yeah.
where you're learning, and because you get to learn, you get to take big swings, and
Mm,
there are no consequences because
totally.
he's as long as you brought the number of people you said you were going to bring,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and if you're
Did your
hosting, you
time.
do his plugs,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you do the time.
All the stuff.
You're in front of the most middle of the road audience. I don't know how
100%.
he ever used to fill that room because he used to
Tot-
fill 60 people in there on
Yeah.
a
Big,
Friday night.
easily the biggest regular crowds I would perform to because
Yeah.
there'd be 60, 70 people there. And yeah.
And none of them were coming back to comedy
Never
after
again.
they'd been to one of
It
those
was
shows.
burnt. It was one time only stuff. But yeah, I did that for ages, and it was so fun to.
Are you banned?
Sort of. I'm banned. I haven't. Yeah, I pulled out of a gig, and then I get canned from another gig, and I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore.
You could be. We should find. I don't know who's still doing them for him. Tommy Orr was always good for because he was doing them ages
Actually,
longer than
I did it. One of the last gigs I did for him was the 15th anniversary of the Dante Bonkers show,
Oh,
and I had to go
wow.
on first. Dante emceed, and he didn't even do a single joke. He just talked about how it's been 15 years, and what he had as on stage was a table full of things that were going to be in the second half raffle, and so he. So he's on stage in the robes,
Yep.
and he's like, "We've got a fan here. We've got all this." He just gone to the reject shop and spent $15, and he had 15 things. And he's like, "We got a year membership to the Bonkers Club," and all these people are like, "What the hell is this?" Right? And then he brings me on first. But before he brings me on, he's like, "This next guy's been doing Bonkers comedy since June 13, 2015." Like, says the date. Like,
Wow.
as a that's a anniversary. And I'm like, "Whoa, that hurt a little bit."
He's
you
one of
know?
the veterans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I have to go on first to this crowd of people who are just looking at me like, "What the hell is this?" And I just start fake auctioning off the raff. I'm trying to like make fun of the situation, but it was so weird. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is like, I just want to try this new bit, and I have to like reset this ridiculous situation that's unfolded. But that's, hey, crazy comics, crazy bookers, man. Like,
But it's part of what makes it fun.
of course, there's so many stories, and so like you can talk about it all day, but it is one of those things where you go, sometimes I walk home and go from a gig and go, why did I do that? But even when it's bad, 90% of the time, even when it's bad, you go, oof, that didn't go well. But you're like, that was something,
Yeah. Yeah,
It's-
there's a story, there's an
a story,
experience,
there's
there's
experience, there's something going on there. It's just such a yeah, and you part of a scene. And I see people, like, I don't see you all the time, but when we chat, we can just chat about that. But even some guys I haven't seen in ages, and I'll meet up with them at a birthday or something. Some guys hasn't done comedy 5 years. Like I saw Chris Curie the other day. One of my
how's he
favorite
doing?
dudes ever. Just loving life, 2 kids, lovely kids, and just the best dude. And we just had a beer, and we were hanging with some of the other guys, and we just started talking about like this. I remember that time that this happened, and just back into it. And it was like such a great chat with, because you were in the trenches of, not to sound too cringy, but you know what I mean? You've got all
Yeah,
those war
you're
stories.
going through those weird experiences because
Yeah.
you just start as a couple of people who want to do comedy.
Yeah.
And you're just surrounded by madness
Yeah.
so often. You're just like looking. And then so there is that thing where you see people a few years on, you go, did that? Like, it's almost like, did that happen?
Do you remember that? Yeah, yeah. Was that were you there with me
Yeah.
when that happened? I know and that's the other thing about comedy, which I found, like, you just find so many. You get, because you're all similar. You get so many friends so quickly. Like, it takes a little while, but then you're like, oh, now all these people, because we all have this one thing in common.
Mm.
We're all from different places and backgrounds or whatever, but like we all like this thing, and so you just connect at a level. Whereas, like, I'm not catching up with a guy I worked in an office with 8 years ago and being like, mate, remember that time the photocopy didn't work? You're like, no, that doesn't happen, because it's not a common thread like that. You know what I
No.
mean? There's something about like playing sport together and then stand up, whereas like so many like friends that you just like bond with, and even if you don't see them that much at the time. You just there's some connection there that
It's it's sort of like an asylum. You're in an asylum, but you've all chosen to be there.
yeah,
Like you
yeah,
could
yeah.
no, you can all leave
Yeah,
whenever
yeah,
you want.
yeah,
It's like, nah,
yeah.
I
No,
got a problem.
well,
I'm
we
gonna
gotta we're
be
gonna complain
yeah,
about it the whole time. We're like,
yeah.
can you believe that this sucks? But we're all here.
Out there in the rest of the world, I'm crazy, but in
Yeah, yeah,
here,
yeah.
I'm nowhere near as bad as look at these guys.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. That's it. That's when you know when you're on a lineup and it's like a really big show and it's a hot crowd, but the lineup are an absolute killers, like a murderer's row, and you're like,
Yeah.
I hate this. I want to go home because you're like, I'm the bad guy. I'm the shit one here, you know. But if you turn up to a Dante gig or whatever, and you're like the big, like sometimes it's like, I mean, you don't want to be like completely odd one out, but it's like it is a bit more like, yeah, I'm not that guy, you know.
Yeah.
He'll bomb, and what I'll do will be amazing compared to that,
I
right?
I love that's one of the things I love working with. I've done a bunch of gigs lately with Lawrence Mooney,
Yeah.
and what he'd done. Like I remember we went up and did Airlie Beach together. So I sort of opened, did the first half, then there's a break, and then he went in and had to do like an hour or whatever.
Mm.
And he's like. He talks. First thing he did was, round of applause for Andrew. Wasn't he good? Yeah, yeah. Okay, you can relax now, though. The professionals here. It's just like I just love that. Like, now we're doing it
Yeah,
different.
yeah. Okay, it's a different thing. You've had the
Yeah,
taster, you know, had
yeah,
the bread at the start of the meal, and here's the main course, right? Yeah.
yeah. But that's it is fun sometimes to be like if you go and run a new material or whatever to go
Mm.
do all the different weird rooms
Yeah.
still just because you can like I don't know like I kind of like going and doing like I'll go do an open mic if I've got something to work on or
Yeah.
whatever.
100%. Yeah.
And like it is fun.
It is fun. It's totally fun. I get something out of it all the time. I love it. I love the best is like 2 or 3 sets in a night where they're all sort of different rooms and you can go and maybe try first out of your mouth at an open mic and then and then you drive into the next one and you're like change this around your head and then you just like even that night you see the progression of a bit, you know? And yeah, if you do the same room 3 times, it's not going to be the same, but I'll literally any room like I'll do. And yeah, like some of the open mics, there's not as many anymore, like the proper just turn up open mics, but they're all worth it. If you go in with the right attitude, they are. It's just, it sucks if that's all you able to do for those
Yeah,
guys, right? But
exactly. Yeah, it's good if you're there because you've chosen to be there.
yes.
Like rather than that's the only place you can be, I suppose.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's good though. It's always a good indication too of you can see who's still working hard. People
Yeah.
that don't need to be doing those rooms that are there, and you're like I'll go through times where I'm like, okay, I'll go work on new like if I'm working on new stuff for a show or whatever,
Mm.
and hit a bunch of rooms, and you're like, you see the same people, and you're like, oh this, and then they're talking about the 3 other gigs you didn't bother going to, and you're like, oh
Yeah.
man, this person's working hard.
They're
They're gonna be
working
good.
hard. Yeah. And everyone who's good worked hard. Like, you know, it's like um, Wrath and Caution and those guys, they are like always been super funny, but they gig so hard
Yeah,
and got so good because of that, right? Like, not that that's the only difference, but they are like, you just, whenever because I never really fully dip out, but I'll certainly have a week where I might do 1 gig or not, and then next week I'll do 3 or 4. But it's like those guys are always around,
yeah,
and it's like you can tell because they're really good. You
yeah,
know, they and they're always working on you. They're not trying to hold. They've always got something. Every time you see them, like Jesus Christ, what is this incredible new 7 that it just makes you feel like the most unfunny person ever. But it's something to aspire to. You know what I mean?
yeah. You want to be the guy making people feel bad.
Yeah, that's all I want to do is make all my friends hate themselves and
Yeah,
quit.
because I'm better
Because
than
I'm better than them. Exactly.
mate. We are about at time, so
Awesome.
once more, plug the festival show.
Yeah,
Festival show.
yeah. So it's called Don't We Look Stupid, September 14th, 16th, and 17th, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday nights. Go get tickets. Best way probably. I have a domain now.
Ooh.
AlexWhiteComedy.com. Can you believe it was
Look at
not
you, big
taken?
boy.
I know. How can you believe it? Like that would make me like shudder down my spine 4 years ago. And that links to getting tickets and all that sort of stuff. And listen to the pod as well that I do. community notice board pod with Drew and Jamie. It's a lot of fun. We'll definitely get Barney back on. You've been on before. And we've got a Patreon now, but just, yeah, it's a lot of fun. We just basically dive into people's hometowns, and we're sort of expanding into like communities in general and all that sort of stuff. So we just have a lot of fun on that. So listen to that.
There's a very dark episode on Adelaide that I listened to this morning.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
I'm like, usually your pod makes me cheerful. I'm like, man, this is a full on true crime.
I know. We didn't have any guests on because we were like, let's just do it us, because it's a bit weird to be like, hey, this person in, let's tell you about the Snowtown fucking murders. But yeah, so we do a little bit of true crimey stuff too, but it's just it's a lot of fun, just three mates hanging out, chatting shit with a guest. Yeah.
Where can people find you online to see those holiday photos? You genuinely three mates too. This actually, before we go, I've got to ask you about this. You guys went on a holiday together.
We sort of did. It was like Jamie was going to Hawaii with his family, and he was like, and then Drew and his partner Han were like, well, maybe we'll come. And then me and my partner were like, well, we're coming too. So we all just booked a holiday, like it was more of a couplesy thing as well. And so we all just ended up being, but then Jamie was like, it was in Hawaii on the main the Oahu Island, which is like where Honolulu is, and he was at one end of the island, me and Drew were at the other end, and it took him like an hour to get in to see us. So we just spent the whole time giving him FOMO by being in the main part, having cocktails, sending him photos. It felt so bad after a while. He's had to stay with his stupid family, and we're just having fun. So it was a great little trip away. But yeah, we are genuinely mates. We were going to do a pod about Hawaii in Hawaii, but then we're like, our girlfriends will kill us if we bring podcasting mics on holiday, let alone the looks from the friggin' airport when they scan and see we've got a pod set up in our bag. But yeah, no, we're good mates, and we did that. We might do that again. We've always talked about it, like go to some of these small towns, and
that'd be a great way to do live shows. Go to the towns and discuss the towns.
Because the one thing about, and you know this, when you do any of those small town gigs or whatever, is if you got a bit about that small town, it's the bet. It's just lightning, man, right?
I had people hit me up online from that I'd been to school with in Corowa after I did your episode. Really? Names I hadn't heard of in years. Just like, hey man. And then someone hit me up who I didn't know from there, but had lived there as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So people love that.
People love that. They love it, and they get defensive about it. We've had some people who are like, because we had a guest on who's like, I hate my shitty small town, and we're trying to make fun of it in a fun way. And then people are like, how dare you talk shit? But like, they love most small towns. If you go to a gig, if you go to a show in Newcastle, not that small town, but some part of Newcastle even, and you make fun of like, Fanny's or, like some institution like that, the crowd are like, yes, he's talking about us. So
he knows us.
He's done his research. So yeah, that's always been a bit of an inspiration. We were like, that'd be so cool to just go to these small towns and do a live show and just get the crowd to tell us stories, like,
beautiful.
Yeah.
So go to the show.
Go to the show. Go buy tickets. Go to the show.
Where is the show?
Marrickville Theatre. Not Marrickville. What is it? Factory Theatre. Yeah, Enmore Theatre. Marrickville Factory Theatre. It's on at 9:30, and the Sunday's at 8:30. 14th, 16th, and 17th of September.
Excellent. Well, worth checking out. You are on Instagram. You're Whitebait Online.
Whitebait Online on Instagram. That's correct. Yes.
Which is
old nickname of mine. Yeah.
Whitebait.
Yeah.
Old school name. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks, mate. This is a lot of fun.
Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.